For the transmission, it's fairly straightforward if you follow the exploded view. There's just a couple things to note. There are two different sizes of bearings. There's the 5x11x4 and the 5x10x4. So the smaller ones go inside the transfer case part and the bigger ones go inside the larger transmission part. And there are two different sizes of pins. Both of them like to fall out, and the bearings like to fall out too, so be careful with that. Note what direction the gears go on the shafts. And this bearing gets installed in the transmission case first, and then the shaft slides through. The top shaft here does have some play in it when you install it, and that's because this pin can go into the gear further than the end of the gear, so it allows for some play. There is a replacement shaft that you can buy aftermarket, but the easy fix is to just drill a hole in this spacer right in line with the hole that's already in the shaft, and then I'm going to use a 1.5mm bolt and nut, but you could just use like the end of a paper clip, stick that through and wrap it around, and then I'll get rid of any of that slop. Do note this little piece there gets installed on the case. It can only go one way. That's to help mount it. Other than that, note which screws you're supposed to use, and remember to put a little grease on the gears as well as around the edges of the case to help it seal. Also, there is a 2-speed upgrade, so that's why most of the transmission case is empty. And there is a little goofy plastic part that just gets pushed in there, and that's to cover up the hole there for the 2-speed shifter that this doesn't come with stock. That would be an upgrade. So here it is, and with that input shaft mod, you can see there's just a little bit of play in it, not too much. Without that, there is some back and forth play. One other thing to note, you want to make sure that everything turns and spins really freely. This last gear, the output gear, was rubbing on the case in there. So I used the Dremel a little bit, ground that down, and now it's spinning freely. So, time to finish screwing these case halves together. Alright, next you screw on the motor mount with 3 ridiculously long screws, and then it's onto the spur gear. You've got peel and stick slipper clutch plates here that peel and stick to the spur gear. And make sure you clean your hands up before touching those, because you don't want to get a lot of oil or grease on them, because then they'll just slip. So then this stuff all goes onto the shaft with the spring and the nut. It's pretty obvious. There's a little spacer for the center of the spur gear to keep it centered. It all goes onto the shaft. And then you mount up your motor and put the pinion on the motor, set the gear mesh. You can slip a piece of paper in between there, or I always just set it to where there's a little bit of play between the gears. These are 32 pitch gears, so they're pretty beefy. You're definitely going to want to set it with just a little bit of play between them. Obviously keep in mind the size of the gear, or you can use the paper trick. And then the final word I would say is definitely leave this cover off, your gear cover, because you're going to have to adjust the slipper clutch. That's something that you can't just do with this assembled. You need to actually get the motor in and try driving it and see if it slips. If it starts slipping, you can tighten it up some until it doesn't slip. So that's pretty much my best advice for the slipper clutch. If it slips, tighten it. Just until it doesn't slip anymore.